Lions hear the bullet hissed, but my man just yelled back, "Motherfucker, you missed!"
Jumping back into our list is an entry that is a bit unique in its placement. Now, besides the original Twilight Zone, growing up my fix of science fiction and fantasy came from the original Planet of the Apes series of films. Now, the first Planet of the Apes premiered in 1968 and starred the legendary Charlton Heston. The film is an adaptation of a little-known novel first published 5 years earlier that was titled Monkey Planet by author Pierre Boulle. Now, the story tells of 3 lost astronauts who crash land on a barren planet populated by upright walking and an intelligent race of apes who are the dominant life form on this said planet. Within the first half hour of the film, Colonel Taylor, our lead protagonist, is separated from his 2 companions, Landon and Dodge, after they are mercilessly hunted down by a gaming party of gorillas with rifles. Dodge is shot to death and Taylor is seriously wounded in the hunt. Taylor is nursed back to health by a sympathetic chimpanzee named Zira, and it is here we make our most important distinction about Ape City. Not all of its inhabitants are bloodthirsty hunters who despise humans. Now, as a matter of fact, it is only the gorillas who enact any type of aggression or violence towards Taylor. The orangutan caste is mainly made up of politicians and bureaucrats, and chimpanzees are the caste of scientists and intellectuals. Through his horrific incarceration, Taylor learns that the humans of this planet are relegated to an animalistic group of brutes, being seen as wholly inferior to the apes in every way. When Taylor was wounded in the hunt, he temporarily lost his ability to speak, allowing him to blend in with the other humans. Now, even so, the apes, in particular Zira and her husband Cornelius, are marveled by Taylor's seemingly unnatural intelligence, never before seen in any human, according to them. After a few weeks, Taylor attempts to escape but is quickly recaptured by the gorillas. It's in this moment that Taylor's voice returns, to the absolute horror of the apes. This puts Taylor in even greater danger as he discovers the apes plan to lobotomize him just as they did his other companion, Landon. With the help of Cornelius and Zira, Taylor escapes a second time, riding far beyond the rim of Ape City. It's here where he learns the terrible truth that he's been on planet Earth this entire time, and that the ape civilization rose as a result of nuclear war, in an iconic scene where he comes face to face with a ruined Statue of Liberty. As villains, the apes portray a credible and disturbing threat that speaks directly to the fragile dominance of human beings. The gorillas challenge our strength, and the orangutans mirror our arrogance and hubris in the form of politicians and bureaucrats that would stoop to any level to hold on to their power. The chimpanzees, on the other hand, offer a glimmer of hope in the understanding of truth seekers and intellectuals. Now, the ape civilization almost perfectly reflects the complicated makeup of human society, but most importantly shows us that there is good and bad in every facet, race, creed, or nationality throughout the complex dance of life. The apes, in a very real sense, are us. In this next entry, we find a group that combine religious fanaticism with expansionist tyranny. The spacefaring army of the Necromongers are essentially a bloodthirsty cult who worship death itself. Now, more specifically, something they call Underverse, a vague concept the Necromongers claim is the source of their technology and their power. Underverse wishes to cultivate the living world and all life forms that dwell in it as part of the fabric of its reality. The Necromongers live by one edict: convert to the will of the Underverse, or die a heretic. There is, of course, one caveat to all of this. The Necromongers fear a specific race of aliens known as the Furians, one of which was prophesied to ultimately destroy them. As a response, the Necromongers rained down genocide on almost all of the Furian race. That is, except for one, a man named Richard B. Riddick, who escaped the death of his people when he was just an infant. Riddick was of a special class of Furian males, known presumptively as Alpha Furians. Now, Alpha Furians possess a number of special abilities, including heightened senses, stamina, and agility. Although it is made unclear if his signature night vision was indeed a product of a back alley surgeon, as he claimed in the first film, or a trait that is inherent to his species. Now, as mentioned before, after the events of the first Pitch Black film, the Necromongers learn of Riddick's existence and that their mission to wipe out all of the Furians had indeed failed. The Necromongers and Riddick are then sent on a direct collision course, where the latter defeats their Lord Marshal in direct combat, making him the new undisputed leader of the Necromonger Horde. The Necromongers have always fascinated me, as they are an extension to the real-life religious cults in our modern-day world. Oh, jeez, not again! I'll wait. Are you finished? Thank you ever so much. Hopefully that's the last one, guys. Anyway, where was I? Right, okay. Now, after all, what's more terrifying than an enemy motivated not by greed or resources, but by blind faith alone? You find yourself faced with an opponent that cannot be bargained or reasoned with. Now, that's essentially what the Necromongers are. They represent groups like Heaven's Gate, the People's Temple, and Om Shinrikyo, scaled up to galactic proportions. Okay, so from religious zealots to 8-foot-tall conquering reptiles, the next faction on our list has always been one of my absolute favorites. The series Farscape burst onto the scene as one of the OGs in a slate of original programming for the Sci-Fi Channel. It tells the story of one John Crichton, a lone astronaut and theoretical scientist who gets sucked through a mysterious wormhole and ends up on the other side of the known universe. In his almost never-ending quest to find a way back home, Crichton acquires a powerful and unknown technology from a primordial race of aliens known as the Ancients. Crichton also hooks up with a motley crew of escaped alien prisoners, who throughout the show become a trusted and surrogate second family to him. In the first season of Farscape, the primary antagonists were the Peacekeepers, a militaristic civilization ruled over by a martial hierarchy. But midway through Season 2, Crichton, the crew of Moya, as well as we the audience, are introduced to the Scarans, a frightening and almost psychopathic race of reptilian humanoids who make the Peacekeepers look tame in comparison. Now, it's explained that the Scarans and the Peacekeepers have been embroiled in a galactic type of Cold War that has lasted for decades. Now, the only reason the Scarans haven't completely overtaken the Peacekeepers, despite their superior numbers, is mainly through the efforts of a man, or rather a hybrid, known as Scorpius. This intimidating Scaran hybrid harbors a deep hatred for the patriarchal side of his heritage due to the Scarans raping and killing his own mother, a young Sebastian woman. In his youth, Scorpius was tortured and humiliated by the Scaran Imperium. Using his intellect, the young Scorpius escaped from the Scarans and vowed ultimate revenge. Later, seeking refuge amongst the Peacekeepers, Scorpius would evolve into quite the cunning and a resourceful villain in his own right. The Scarens come in two distinct caste classifications, the long face and the short face. The long-faced Scarens are primarily the military enforcers, the low-level administrators, and sometimes even negotiating ambassadors as seen in Season 2. The short face are the ruling caste amongst the Scaren Imperium, as seen with figures like Empress Dalik and War Minister Akna. Scarens typically range from 5 to 8 feet in height, and in addition to their range of heightened senses and abilities, possess their signature weapon, namely their heat probe, the blast of concentrated thermal energy that can be aimed at specific targets. The heat probe is mainly used as a truth serum of sorts, but if applied with enough force over a prolonged period, the heat probe can be used to lethal effect. However, one glaring weakness that Scarens have is their reliance on something called Crysterium. It's a rare plant that must be consumed by the reptiloids in order to maintain their higher brain functions. When the Scarens learn that Crichton possesses the aforementioned wormhole technology given to him by the ancients, they engage in hot pursuit of our hero. Midway through Season 3, both the Peacekeepers and the Scarens are hell-bent on capturing Crichton to extract his wormhole technology in order to produce a super weapon to be used against the other side. At the conclusion of the series, Crichton indeed delivers this super weapon in the form of a death-dealing black hole. Seeing just how monstrously destructive this weapon is, both the Peacekeepers and the Scarens back down, agreeing to a mutual, albeit tenuous peace. The Scarens perfectly amplify the tropes of the so-called lizard people that walk amongst us. They are the reptile people taken to its highest and most terrifying conclusion. They are the alpha predators of the Farscape universe, and I gotta tell you, I love them all the more for it. Simply put, the Scaren race is absolutely kick-ass. Number 2 is the most loosely connected faction on the list. Now, many people might argue that the old ones are a more staple of horror than they are sci-fi, and in many cases they'd be right. But the genius that was Lovecraft went for a truly grand scope when he created his pantheon of cosmic monsters. Many of Lovecraft's stories do take place with the backdrop of an alien tapestry. Now, Cthulhu, the Elder Things, and the Great Azathoth are often described as beings that reside just as comfortably in the realm of science fiction as they do horror. Now, in fact, Lovecraft is credited as the father of the genre of cosmic horror. Now, before anybody chimes in, I'm well aware that there is a direct distinction between those described as the Old Ones and those that occupy the title of Outer and/or Other Gods. Now, for the purposes of this list, I'm using the Old Ones as a kind of a nebulous category for all of Lovecraft's creative abominations. As such, I'm placing beings like the King in Yellow, Cthulhu, the Crawling Chaos, and Yog-Sothoth all in the same designation. Since Lovecraft created such a loose-fitting canon, not much is known about these Old Ones. Now, what we do know is that they are godlike cosmic beings of near infinite power who make humanity look like insignificant specks of dust in the grand scheme of things. It's commonly thought that the Old Ones operate completely independently of each other, despite some being vastly more powerful than the rest. Now, the best things about the creations of Lovecraft was that he openly invited everyone to partake in his nightmares. He was known to encourage others to add on to the Cthulhu mythos, to create their own stories and characters within his universe, which of course many did. The most famous being writers like, people like August Derleth and of course Robert E. Howard, who was the creator of Conan the Barbarian, who was actively known to set his stories within the world and universe of Lovecraft. And this is where I bring in my shameless plug. Deal with it. Now, I'm a self-described stan of the works of H.P. Lovecraft. So much so that his stories inspired me to fully incorporate the Cthulhu mythos in my own independent films. In the Warrensdale mystery Keep Smiling, The Grinning Man Murders, and my upcoming film, Warrensdale Cult of the Dreamer, I attempt to weave a singular narrative that connects the pantheon of the Old Ones and their nightmarish influence that they have over the lives of my film's characters. So, check them out. Now. Just kidding. Lovecraft created the notion of cosmic gods that view mankind as nothing more than pawns to be manipulated as they saw fit. The Old Ones are not your loving skyfathers or whimsical tricksters merely set to guide or influence we here on Earth. They are a collection of all-powerful entities that really couldn't give a damn either way. The fate of the human race isn't even a passing thought to the Old Ones, which is a scary thought. Whether we live or whether we die, it makes no difference to the Old Ones. And now we finally arrive at the cream of the evil crop. The zenith, the pinnacle of ultimate villainy, in some aspects anyway. Now, if you check on my video detailing the Code of the Sith, where I examine in depth what it really means to be a Sith Lord, you'll know that I personally don't consider the Sith to be necessarily all evil. They simply live by survival of the fittest. Now, if you're not strong enough to live into the future, then you were never meant to survive in the first place. Much like we conservatives, the Sith operate mostly on what some would call cold logic. They believe in preserving their heritage and traditions to pass on to future generations. Now, I won't go in depth here, but check out the video in which I lay out my arguments that the Code of the Sith parallels modern-day conservatism. But at any rate, I'll never forget the first time I saw the likes of Darth Vader and the Emperor striding across the screen. They exuded such confidence and such power. They, much like most Sith, commanded respect wherever they went. Now, to a young boy growing up in the 80s and 90s, the Sith represented everything that I aspired to be. They were mysterious, logical, and powerful. But you know what? Most importantly, they demanded respect, and if not given that respect, they would take it directly out of your ass. In Star Wars lore, the Sith began with a contingent of exiled Jedi led by one Ajunta Pall. This disgraced Jedi landed on the backwater planet of Korriban, where they first encountered the Sith species, a race of red-skinned aliens that were uniquely attuned to the dark side of the Force. Using their own knowledge of the Force, Ajunta Pall and his accompanying ex-Jedi used their powers to dominate the Sith species and take control of Korriban. Through force of will and intermingling, the Order of the Sith was born, thus leading to thousands of years of dark side tradition, history, and conflict. Now, although the Sith are not the only faction in the galaxy which operate within the dark side of the Force, they are said to be the strongest and most powerful Darksider faction. Now, this is because the Sith are known to fully give themselves over to the dark side, holding nothing back. It is commented by many that unlike the Night Sisters or the Sorcerers of Rand, the Sith are the true children of the dark side of the Force. What can I say? The Sith spoke to me on a personal level. In many ways, they showed me that I didn't have to be a slave to what others thought or wanted me to be. That I could carve out my own destiny and not have to answer to anyone from the perspective of having a successful and independent life. Now, call me crazy, but I think that all of us could take at least one or two lessons from a Sith Lord. But if you want to know the most important thing that George Lucas's villains taught me, well, it's very simple. They taught me to question everything and trust no one. I hope you enjoyed. We'll see you.